Can AI solve dyslexia? We're going to find out today with our amazing special guest, Russel van Brocklen.
Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast, where we make AI simple, practical, and accessible for small business owners and leaders. Forget the complicated tech talk or expensive consultants. This is where you'll learn how to implement AI strategies that are easy to understand and can make a big impact for your business. The Artificial Intelligence Podcast is brought to you by Fraction AIO, the trusted partner for AI digital transformation. At Fraction AIO, we help small and medium-sized businesses boost revenue by eliminating time-wasting, non-revenue generating tasks that frustrate your team. With our custom AI bots, tools, and automations, we make it easy to shift your team's focus to the tasks that matter most, driving growth and results. We guide you through a smooth, seamless transition to AI, ensuring you avoid costly mistakes and invest in the tools that truly deliver value. Don't get left behind. Let Fraction AIO help you stay ahead in today's AI-driven world. Learn more and get started at fractionaio.com.
Now, Russell, I'm really excited to have you here because this is an area that very much interests me because as someone with 5 kids, we've dealt with some challenges with dyslexia, some challenges with dysgraphia, and even learning that those are different have come up for us, and that a lot of parents now are looking for digital tools to solve all their problems. Like, but every kid is on a tablet, every kid is on a phone too early. And this is certainly a pressure I feel from school, where they told me to give my daughter a cell phone in 3rd grade, and I said, not going to happen. That's way too early, but we're seeing more of these learning challenges. I love that you're passionate about dyslexia. So I kind of love to hear how you've started to build a plan to help people overcome that, and also where technology finds a role in that journey, whether is it too soon or too late? When is the right place to learn the technology? Because sometimes I like to talk about maps. Like, I grew up learning how to read maps, but now everyone just uses GPS and sort of lose that foundational skill. Like, my children saw me writing in cursive the other day. They're like, what is that? And I was like, it's still English. I had to learn this for 2 years. What do you mean you don't teach us anymore? Are you kidding me? This is a real part of my childhood suffering. So I'd love to hear your approach to really dealing with dyslexia, kind of some of the really innovative things you've done, and then where in the journey artificial intelligence plays a role.
Okay, thanks for having me. The first thing that I want your guests to understand is when anybody is talking about dyslexia, that is not what the rich private schools use that are $70,000 a year, which is an Orton Gillingham multi-sensory approach. You have to know where they're coming from. My research is based on this. It's a book called Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywitz, and everything I'm about to tell you is based on this brain diagram. All right. Now, I'm not going to use unimpaired brain. I'm going to use gen ed to refer to that. So I want you to look at this. Look at the back part of the gen ed brain. Do you see all that neural activity? Okay.
Sure do.
Do you see how the dyslexic brain has virtually none? But the front part of the brain is about 2.5 times overactive for the dyslexic brain?
Yes.
Okay. That deals in 2 areas: word analysis followed by articulation. So my research is based on, let's stop working on the part of the brain where we have very little neural activity and focusing on the dyslexic strength, which is word analysis followed by articulation. What I initially did in my career is I took a bunch of dyslexic high school kids, highly motivated, highly intelligent, excellent family support, college bound. We gave them the GRE analytical writing assessment. That's a test for going into grad school. Their writing was at the middle school level. They scored in the 0 to 6 percentile. Within one class period a day for the school year, they increased their writing to the average range of entering graduate school students. They all went to college, all graduated with GPAs between 2.5 to 3.6. No accommodations. Cost New York State less than $700 a kid. But when I had to transition that to everybody, because these kids are so motivated, they would do any amount of work you gave them, we had to step back and make a change to the model. The first thing that we found out is that we had to focus on the dyslexic student speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability. So you mentioned that you have some dyslexic kids. Would you mind if we used one of them as an example, changing their name to protect their privacy?
People probably know the names of my kids. I'm pretty famous, but he actually dealt with more dysgraphia with one of my sons. So I'm much more familiar with that, which was He'd flip numbers, a lot of number reversing.
Right. But the treatment's the exact same.
Okay, good. Perfect.
So you can change his first name, but what's the name of your son? Whatever name you'd like to use.
Sure. Well, Thomas.
Thomas. Okay. First thing that we found out is we have to focus on the child's speciality. What is Thomas? So how we do that is we say on a Saturday morning, you have nothing to do. You can do whatever you want. What is it? So what is Thomas's speciality?
Swimming.
Swimming. Okay. So that's the specialty. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have to focus on that area. So we need to find a printed book and an audio book that he's interested in. You can find the audio book. The printed book is pretty much a given most of the time. So in his case, maybe we would pick a biography of Michael Phelps.
Okay.
Or something that he'd be extraordinarily interested in. The next thing is, and I found this working with senior professors, is even when they were in college and they were STEM majors, they would focus on maybe taking philosophy, art history, even if they didn't like the subject. I was like, why? It was because the professor taught not from the general to the specific, but from the specific to the general. So what I would do is I would ask Thomas, okay, in your speciality, in swimming, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? And he's going to answer yes. And then I say, what we're going to do is we're going to force the brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. So again, we're going to force the brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Next thing is that when he says yes to that first question, that's ADD, ADHD, or mild dyslexia or dysgraphia. Next question is to see if it's severe. And what I'll ask is, Thomas, you want to write about swimming. Fingers, keyboard. Fingers, keyboard. The idea's in your head. You take your fingers, you put them on the keyboard. Does the idea fly out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain? If he says yes, that's severe dyslexia. All right. I just saved you about $5,000 in a neuropsych evaluation. Having that information would help, but it doesn't really tell me much more than those two questions. So essentially what you need to understand about dyslexia is we have ideas flying around our head at light speed, but with little to no organization. With that understanding, as we force the brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output, what that does is by focusing on the speciality, focusing on how our brain works, and then word analysis followed by articulation, what happened is now we're finally working with the brain and how dyslexics want to learn. So give me an example. Did you ever watch the movie Fast and Furious?
Yes, many times.
Okay. Do you remember the scene where Paul Walker's in there designing the car, that junk car? And he asked, how come you're not at MIT? And he says, I'm really good at this. I can't do all the other stuff. Sound familiar?
Yep.
That's what happens when you step outside of the speciality. Okay. So we find a book that meets that. We focus on the specific to the general and word analysis followed by articulation. Just to give you an example of when you're working with dysgraphia, can you give me some examples of what your son's running into, what problems he has?
He'll just read numbers backwards. So if it's 13, he'll say 31. So then when he does the addition, the final answer is dramatically wrong.
So he's doing fine in English class is pretty much the math issues that he's running into?
Yes.
Okay. So again, what's happening is he's thinking incredibly fast. So what grade is your son in? Second grade. Okay. Is he writing basic sentences okay now?
Yes.
Okay. So how we would go about trying to fix that, I'm going to give you an example. Can he write Thomas likes swimming?
Yes.
Okay. Can he write Thomas likes swimming because it's fun, he likes being with his friends, and he likes the water?
No, that's too long of a sentence. He could write 3 sentences maybe, but not one long sentence for sure.
Not one long sentence. All right. So how you'd go about fixing that very specific case, all right, is you'd have him write Thomas likes swimming, just for most of your guests, because your son he's very much more advanced than a lot of kids with dysgraphia in second grade. I'm just going to get you to how we're going to get there. So let me just give you an example. So let's say Thomas was having trouble writing Thomas likes swimming. All right. And I'm going to show you how we generally get there for your other guest. First thing, what we would do is we'd have him type out hero plus sign. What are we talking about? Then we would switch out, and we're always typing. We're not handwriting, because when you're trying to write the letter W instead of hitting a key, it takes so much more mental energy that even with the best kids that I worked with in high school, after we got them up to the 70th percentile in the GRE, when we had them type there, it dropped barely in the 30th percentile. It really just fell down. So what we would have them do is type out hero plus sign. See how we got there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm listening.
Okay. Now, this is for the kids who have dysgraphia who can't write Thomas likes swimming. All right. We're at Thomas plus sign swimming. Now and I'm going to have to ask you a very specific question. 90% of the times when I do this at special education conferences, the teachers get it wrong. You have to follow what I'm saying exactly. Here's my question. Does Thomas like or dislike swimming?
Thomas likes swimming.
Okay, but that's not what I asked. I asked, does Thomas or dislike? You automatically added the yes. Your son can add the yes. A lot of dysgraphia kids can't add the yes. So they would have put like.
Oh.
Because that's what I asked. So it's Thomas like swimming. Now, how do we get them to add the yes? The Orton-Gillingham approach, Dr. Orton passed away in 1948. Hasn't changed a lot since then. They use seeing, touching, hearing. You would have taken over a week to figure out how to get him to add the yes. It's very complicated. So a much faster way is we would have Thomas like swimming. I would ask Thomas to read that out loud. Does that sound generally correct? No. So then what he would do is I would say, fix it. Thomas likes swimming. The assumption is he speaks proper English. By asking, does it sound generally correct? No. Fix it. That gets rid of those horrendous grammar mistakes. All right. Does that make sense? But your son is already there. So now, how do we move Thomas so that he can write those longer sentences? And it's really simple, because what you need to understand is he's in second grade. You want to get this stuff solved by the end of third grade, because at the end of third grade, K through 3, we learn to read. From fourth and beyond, it's reading to learn. So if there are still issues, if he can't pass your state, so what state are you in?
Oh, I live in Asia. So we're in
Okay. Okay. Whatever school system you're in, or how you're educating him, if at the end of third grade he's not passing the standard reading and writing assessment, then that's an academic 911. So you want to correct that in the next year. Any concerns? So here's how we do it. We have him make a list of 10 things he really likes. And if you're okay with negatives, 10 things he really dislikes, or you can do 20 likes. And what you have him do is, because he can write Thomas likes swimming, what's the one chore he hates to do? Absolutely detests.
Taekwondo.
So he hates Taekwondo? Okay. So Thomas dislikes Taekwondo. Okay. That's the first one. So what we do is we would then say because and reason one. We'd have him type out reason one separately. Okay. Thomas likes swimming because it's fun. Okay. We do that 10 times. And then there's 10 dislikes. We do that 10 times. And then we move on to reason one and reason two. We say, we're going to take these two reasons and glue them together. And then as far as the Oxford comma are you a 1 comma person or a 2 comma person when you have 3 reasons?
I'm a 2 comma person.
Okay. Yeah. Then Thomas is a 2 comma kid. So then we do 3 reasons. And we just have to, and if he's having issues with that, here's how we correct the spelling and grammar. Because this is going to be one of the biggest things we're going to tell you. In my initial study, the teacher spent almost no time on spelling and grammar, went from horrendous to clean at the graduate level. So what we do is we'll have Thomas type things out. And before you put the period down, he can ask any question. If there's a misspelled word, if he did a major grammatical mistake, if he asks the question, did I misspell this? And you say yes, and you type it out, and he copies it. If that cleans it up, he's done. Once he puts the period down, if there's a spelling mistake or a major grammatical issue, then he has to retype the entire sentence. And what happens when he retypes it? I'm not going to make that mistake. He makes the mistake. He keeps making the mistake. And then then you tell him one of two things. You made a silly mistake or a silly error. That's the least offensive words I found. And then he keeps concentrating until he hyper focuses so much. Sometimes you see sweat coming down the forehead. What happens after that? Eventually, on the 10th, 11th, 12th time, he finally gets it right. And then as we move on to the next one, you keep him on like maybe reason one until he does it correctly. You do that all the way through doing those sentences. Now you're at the end of second grade, beginning third grade writing level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a starting point. All right. Now, as far as where does artificial intelligence come in? There's a book called The Craft of Research. And this is important for parents to understand because with The Craft of Research, it was designed, it came out in 1995 by the University of Chicago to help their PhD students who couldn't write research papers. Tells them how to do it. It's under 3 levels: context, problem, solution. Get everything down to a context, then to reduce it to a problem, and then come up with a solution where the reader learns something substantive. If the reader doesn't learn something substantive, it says don't write the paper. So that pretty much eliminates almost every high school and college paper in North America each year. Why am I harping on this such advanced book? Because when I finished up with my initial program, when I presented in New York City in 2006, the professors came to me and said, you got the kids writing at the 70th percentile on the GRE writing assessment, graduate records exam. We don't care. We want the craft of research. One of the top dyslexic schools in New York City, one of the headmasters told me, nobody's playing at this level. No private school in New York City is touching this book. It's too evolved. I'm going to show you how we drop that to 4th grade. In context, and we're not using AI yet. I'm telling parents we're going to put AI off until after the kids can already write, I would have to say, a pretty good advanced body paragraphs, probably usually at the 8th grade level, typically when we'll get done with problems. So what we have to do with context is we show them how to write multiple body paragraphs where each body paragraph has a quote that comes from the universal theme. And we answer who, what, when, where, how, why. And then what we do is once we have those 3 body paragraphs, how do we reduce that to the context? We take the most important quotes, because we put all 3 of them together, and we have all the who, what, when, where, how, why. And then we start working with the student to reduce that to one medium to long sentence. Now, at that point, I think it's better for the students not to use artificial intelligence. Some teachers have taken this concept and have used it to start asking the artificial intelligence to help students to take, again, the 3 quotes, the 3 answers to who, what, when, where, how, why, and to step-by-step methodically help them reduce that to a single medium to long sentence. Okay? You can use it there or not use it there. Once you get down to a medium to long sentence, now we have to come into a problem. And how we do that is we need to reduce the medium to long sentence to a short to medium sentence. And at that point, I tend to have the students practice it again without artificial intelligence. Some teachers use it to help them reduce it to a short to medium question. This is where I start to bring in the artificial intelligence. Once we have the problem statement reduced to a short to medium sentence, notice how we're shrinking it. Now we're reducing the problem to a one-word universal thing. Okay? And that's where I find that even when I do this all day, it's challenging. So I have the students reduce it to a one-word universal thing using artificial intelligence, and I know that they're ready to move on to the solution point once they can do this about half the time on their own. I have them type out the word, go to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, type out the definition. If you copy and paste it, you're wasting your time. They have to physically type out the word and the definition. That builds up their long-term vocabulary. Please note what I'm showing you here, going right back to the science. Front part of the brain, 2.5 times overactive, word analysis followed by articulation. Once we've had the problem reduced to a one-word universal theme, now what we do is we have the context come down, and then we take that context and we run it through the universal. We use the universal theme as a lens to come up with 3 solutions. Okay? What are 3 solutions to the problem now? When you do that, you're going to get solutions that a well-read student would come up with. So would you like to run through that first?
I want to make sure I understand the piece that come before.
Okay.
There's a couple of critical steps I want to make sure I understand. The first is that learning using a keyboard is much better than learning by writing by hand because of the speed. That was felt really important to me. So that's the first step. Okay. And then the second step is starting with something that someone's really passionate about, learn from reading by starting with a subject you're interested in, as opposed to learn how to read and then get to the stuff you like. Is that correct?
Yes. No, until you bring, I call it the intervention period.
Okay.
Until you're reading at or above grade level. And I suggest going a couple of grade levels above. So let me give you an example. This book was given to Casey. She's extremely interested in Theodore Roosevelt. 900 pages, 10th grade to first year college level. Casey was 10. She was reading at the 2nd grade level. In 6 months, I never saw anything this fast again. Before, I'll never see it again. She knew every word in that book. Every definition. Okay. She went from the worst reader in her class to the best reader in her class. Okay. So until they're comfortably above grade level, you stay in that area, because once you step outside, they're the most motivated kid, you're down 50%. Typical student, you're down 75, 80% as far as motivation is concerned.
Okay. Okay.
Let me give you an example. Is there a sport no, Thomas, it's like Taekwondo. It's like saying, okay, Thomas, guess what? You're going to spend 6 hours a day in Taekwondo classes each day.
He's crying.
That's what happens when you pull them out of their speciality. Something that, remember, the dyslexic professors did not excel until they reached graduate school, topped their class day 1. Did much worse K through the first 2 years of college, a little better the last 2, but still horrible compared to their eventual peers. They walk into grad school, they own the place.
Right.
Okay, so you stay in that speciality, and the schools are designed, what do? They make us well-rounded. It's not anti-speciality. They teach from the general to the specific. We have nothing to latch onto. We have all that chaos in our head. All right, we're not teaching word analysis first. We're not following that by articulation, which is right there in the Overcoming Dyslexia book. So they are doing everything to mess us up. And you wonder why we rebel or have a hard time.
Okay. So I think that for a lot of the parents who have different types of special needs challenges, and there's a broader spectrum, we're seeing a lot of other kids, my children's school, have these different challenges. That's one thing they constantly bring up, which is it's really hard to keep my kids interested. So one of the things someone said to me, which was very telling, they said, we tried getting the kid to play with AI, but he got bored really quickly. And I was like, that's really, so exactly what you talked about. It didn't have start with the interesting part and then bring the education. So I think that's a really powerful lesson. It resonates with me. I think that's really interesting approach, because I grew up traditional education. All of my challenges were interpersonal and social, not in the classroom. So I come from the other end of the spectrum. So that's one of the challenges. Sometimes it's hard to see what someone else is walk in someone else's shoes, because it's the opposite experience. So I love Taekwondo, opposite, but I do love swimming. So we do have stuff in common, but it's very interesting. So a lot of people now are trying to figure out And I think that it's very interesting. I think it's really critical you brought up that it's not at the beginning. You don't bring AI in until 4 or 6 years later, because there's this temptation, there's this thought, and people think this about me, that I think AI is the solution to everything. So when it's not the right solution, I think that's a critical thinking thing that we sometimes lose, is that we go, oh, this can solve everything. Google has the answer to everything. I don't have to learn math anymore because I have a calculator. So knowing that there's a time and place to use each tool, I think is really useful. So let's go back to the final part of what you're teaching, which is, okay, we've got someone, they've learned how to distill it down using AI to the one powerful idea. So they've gone into word analysis and then articulation. And that seems to be very powerful because they're using the front part of the brain. I love that. Do they reach up to someone who comes from dyslexia with this challenge, reach a point where they can shift back into doing it the way everyone else does? Or, because one of the things that I experienced a lot was, and you mentioned earlier, is like you get infinity time for every test. You have all these other accommodations. Do people still need that? Or by going through this system, can they now compete at the same level in the same amount of time windows? Does it level the playing field?
Let me give you an example of my experience in the late 90s. I went to audit law classes with a first grade reading and writing ability after college. I literally walked in. My second day in contracts, they use the Socratic method. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yep. They ask you questions.
And if you don't know the answer, what do?
I don't know. Hurt your feelings?
No, they keep asking questions. They
Okay.
embarrass you.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
That's to get you to argue any point of any law thing at any time, if you're prosecutor, defense, or judge. Second day of class in contracts, Professor Warner calls on me. He's a dyslexic professor. I purposely went to see him. He was the professor for decades. And everything slowed down. I could then see everything was organized. He started berating me with questions. I berated him right back. I could see 4, 6 steps ahead. I couldn't beat him. He couldn't beat me. We're going back and forth with each other in a ferocious exchange. At the end of 15 minutes, he said, "Russell, due to time constraints, I have to move on to the next case. You couldn't be any more correct." My classmates looked at me in awe and kind of trepidation. The ones, remember, I'm auditing. The ones who stayed in said, even after they graduated, they couldn't do half of what I did that second day of contracts. A couple weeks later, we're getting quizzes in property. And what they do is they try to ask you such complicated questions, you're supposed to think for 3 to 5 minutes. I didn't think for 3 to 5 seconds. I was done in less than 2. And I had perfect scores. I solved my reading issues with that quickly. I would read much slower, and then I would just say, that's it. I could process information so much more rapidly. The answer is yes. And then when it came time for my New York State funded program, I had to get the approval of the senior university professor. People said it was going to take years. He was Professor James College. He had $1.5 million in federal funding from the U.S. Education Department, wrote a book called Strategies for Struggling Writers. How long do you think it took me to get his approval for my curriculum?
3 to 5 seconds, 2 seconds.
No, I had to actually write it out and submit and get his approval.
3 months?
Less than 2 weeks. Because I didn't have any more time. It was a university-wide competition. I got 15,000. We tested out the program on a couple of students. And then I got New York State Senate funding for multiple year study in a public school. All right. So what I can tell you is, does it ever get better? Yes. Once you reach grad school, it gets so, we own the place day one. What about for the head and hands kids, the kids who would go into like advanced manufacturing, electricians, that sort of thing? I had one student, he was our second student, his name was Adam. His teacher said, this kid is a genius. We started off writing at the 7th grade level. We finished him up at the 70th percentile in the GRE about 5 months later. He went to college, he did the 2-year thing, and he went into a union where they do things with massive boilers. They called him in on vacation, and he goes in there and he says, "I'm so sorry. It took him like a couple of days to figure out the problem." And they said, "We've been at this for over a month." Okay. So is there an advantage? Yes. just so you know, you have a child now, they're going to go to a 2-year college for head and hands, advanced manufacturing, electrician, auto mechanics, that sort of thing. Or if they're going to go into a typical college, they really need to do a master's degree now. A bachelor's degree when we went was something. Now it's like a high school diploma. They want the master's. And once the dyslexic walks into grad school, we own the place. So absolutely, it is so unfair of an advantage. And as AI, were you there watching when they were discussing things in ChatGPT and they say, oh, we're having a $200 a month pro model? Were you watching that one?
Yep.
I bought that day. It has been nothing short of a godsend for me going through things. I now am producing, to give you an example, I had all this research that I needed to write up for the past 20 years. Within a day, I had 20 draft PhD level articles. Within a day using O1 Pro.
Okay.
For the first time in my, it is such an advantage out in the work. Give me an example. I had a kid, one of my former students, and, this happened in the last 12 months. He gets out of college and he's terrified. He said, we have to produce like literally day one. And I don't know what to do. I said, you've been trained in the craft of research. Go to the AI. And he knows nothing about prompt engineering, nothing about any of this stuff. I said, work with it to come up with a context. He comes back. Okay, I did that. I hate this. Welcome to the adult world. Now do the problem. He comes back. Oh, this is hard. Yes, you've been trained. Go come up with a solution. He came back with a 5-paragraph solution. His boss is flipping through these 5-paragraph solutions for all these new hired kids. He said, I can't use this. I can't use this. Comes to his. That's a good idea. We can use that. Guess who got to keep his job?
I'm assuming the dyslexic.
Yes, he got to keep his job, and his boss was very impressed. And he said, how do you know the work with AI so well? He said, I don't know anything about AI. I called my former tutor, and he said, go context, problem, solution. I just fumbled around until I came up with this. And then when he looked up the craft of research, he said, you know how to do this? Yeah, how do you think I got through college? He thought everybody did it that way. He just did it the old-fashioned way. He would go and look things up with books and break things out on 3x5 cards. All right. What I try to tell students is what you can do with the AI now, especially since O3 came out and especially O3 Pro, is have it double check everything, have it pull out everything, but then you literally do have to go and double check it. Because if you turn in because I had a student do this, they turned into a paper, I had O3 check it multiple times from this past semester. It gave a site that was wrong. They got reamed out. Did you hear about the lawyers a couple of years ago who turned in the... I said, it still happens. That one mistake and the teacher went ballistic. You can't rely on AI to do your fact checking for you. Yes, you still have to go into this thing called a library.
Yeah.
All right. And what the kids need to understand is once they start their careers, when you have your bachelor's, your master's degree, you are still there to do the grunt work until you reach the point where you're a mid-level person. You have the fresh kids coming and doing the grunt work. They seem to fail to understand that. A lot of times they want to go right into the advanced position, like you're just starting out.
Yeah. No, I think this is really helpful to see that there is a time and place to use AI after you've mastered those foundational skills. I think this is really powerful. A lot of people now are facing these challenges. For people who are listening and want to learn more about what you do or interested in how you're approaching this, where's the best place to find you online, find your website, find what you're doing?
Before we get, I just want to leave one last thing. You need to understand about AI once you're out of school, even at O3 Pro, we're now in the summer of 2025, is that it's only good enough to get you to a first draft very quickly. Okay, that's your point. And then you turn it over to a senior person who rips it out, rips it apart, rewrites it, but it gets you to that first draft very quickly. That's all it's good for. If you try to take what it produces and submit that as a final product, you're really doing a disservice for yourself. So just understand that main point. So the best way to get in contact with me is dyslexiaclasses.com. We're going to send you a link where it's customized to your podcast. And if your parents click on that, they fill out a form. And if they're interested, we send the guide, the 3 reasons your child is having trouble in school due to dyslexia. And they fill that out, and it sets up a 15-minute appointment with me where I go over things with your child. I ask them those 2 questions. And then I ask, is this how you'd like to overcome your reading and writing concerns? And I can tell you, children are by far my harshest critics. If they don't say, yes, this is how my brain works, I'm not the person for them. But normally after those 2 questions we discussed today, it's yes. They want more of a direct response. They can just go to Dyslexia Classes, plural, dyslexiaclasses.com, and fill out the contact form. And I get back to them right away.
Amazing. So head over to dyslexiaclasses.com/artificial intelligence. Take that special quiz, and I'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes and below the video on YouTube. Russell, thank you so much for being here. This was really informative. I think it's going to help a lot of people to see how they can approach a problem methodically and when is the right time and not the right time to use technology. So this was amazing. Thank you so much for being here for today's episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next Monday with more tips and strategies on how to leverage AI to grow your business and achieve better results. In the meantime, if you're curious about how AI can boost your business's revenue, head over to artificialintelligencepod.com/calculator. Use our AI revenue calculator to discover the potential impact AI can have on your bottom line. It's quick, easy, and might just change the way you think about your business. While you're there, catch up on past episodes, leave a review, and check out our socials.